Okay, in this video we're going to talk about using Relight in a production pipeline, and in this case a production pipeline using Maya to do modeling and animation, and then using Relight to do surfacing, lighting, and rendering. So the bakery provides a plugin for Maya, which you can use to export your whole scene if you like, and then do the lighting as is, but typically a production pipeline is more complex than that. We want to identify assets which can be shared by multiple shots, and so we're going to export those assets separately. So if we look at this scene, this is Maya's reference editor, we can see that we're actually referencing assets in 3 different files, a plane, a sphere, and a column, which is referenced 4 times. So we're going to export those assets separately. So here we're going to open one of the asset files. This is the file containing the column. Now what we need to do is identify this column as an asset for Relight and give it a unique name. So one way for doing this, we found, is to add an extra attribute in Maya, which we call BK asset, and we've called this asset column. So now what we're going to do is export this file using the bakery plugin. Let's see if the plugin is there. It is. Okay, so then what we do is File, Export All. There are lots of different options, but they can be controlled more or less automatically by this last one, which is a configuration file. And this configuration file is important because it specifies in particular that we're exporting an asset as opposed to a shot, and it specifies also where assets are stored. So in fact, you don't need to specify a file name, it's all computed automatically. So there we've exported our asset, and we're going to load it into Relight. We specified that this asset should be exported with a turntable animation and with 3-point lighting. So here we are in Relight. You can see that there is an animation for the asset. Now we'll do a rendering of it with Compute All. And now we're bringing up the material which was exported for this asset. You can see that a very simple shading tree was created from what was found in Maya. It's not at all complete, but we did create a simple material which has the same textures and some of the same colors as in Maya. So here we're tweaking the diffuse color, tweaking the glossiness, tweaking various parameters. And let's say we want to add a bump map. We're going to use a Perlin noise operator to generate a bump map, play with the frequency, get a frequency we like, then connect it to the bump map attribute of our material, turn up the bump until we're satisfied. Okay, and now let's say that's what we wanted. So we're going to save the scene and go back into Maya and get another asset. This time we're going to open the plane asset. And this is our asset, and once again the object has an extra attribute in Maya saying that this is an asset called plane. As before, we export using the bakery plugin. We don't need to specify a file name because it's determined by the name of the asset. Go back into Relight and load the asset we just exported. Here it is. Again, we have already a turntable animation and some lights which were created by default. Render the asset. There it is. Bring up the shader tree. Now say, okay, here we're going to play with the color. And we also want to add some displacement mapping for this object. So we brought up the geometry shader tree. We added a displacement node to the shader tree. And this time we're going to use another noise function, a whirly noise function, to generate the displacement maps. So we connect that to the geometry. Re-render. That's a bit extreme. We're going to turn it down a bit. Re-render. Still a bit too much. Turn it down again. Re-render, and okay, say we're happy with that. So we're going to save that asset and go back to Maya and get the last one, which is the sphere. So we'll open the Maya file containing the sphere asset. It's got an extra attribute saying this is the asset called sphere. Export it just like the others. Give it any file name at all, because that will be ignored. And load it into Relight. There it is. We've got our turntable animation. We've got some default light sources. Render. Bring up the shading tree. Let's say with this one we're going to give it some nice green highlights, which make no sense. Okay, that looks good. Play with the glossiness. And here we're going to give it a sort of a Fresnel effect by using an incidence gradient operator, which will map from, say, a yellow to white. Okay, looks good. And there we have an expression operator, which is going to mix the gradient with the original texture. And there you go. That looks great. We're going to save that. Okay, last step is to export the shot itself, which references those assets. So here's our shot, the original shot. You can see it's got an animated camera. It's also got some animation. The sphere is animated, and the sphere deforms as it moves. And it's also got a couple of objects, these wall objects, which are not assets. They're just added directly to the shot. So again, we export using the Bakery plugin, only this time we're going to use a different configuration file, which says we're exporting a shot and specifies the name of the shot, where the shot is stored. Type in any file name at all, because it will be ignored, and export. Okay, that's done. Now we'll see the result in Relight. And here we are. As you can see on the left, there's a hierarchy view. We can see the file references similar to the reference editor in Maya. And there are viz groups which allow you to visualize the whole shot or else each asset separately. You can see we have the camera animation. We also have the deformation of the sphere. So these are the viz groups, one for each asset, and that one for the entire shot. And now we can render. And the important thing to note here, of course, is that we will have all the materials and textures and displacement maps, bump maps that we created earlier in Relight for each asset. It's all black. Why? Because we don't have any lights. For the shot we didn't request that any default lights be created. We want to just export lights from Maya, and since there weren't any, we don't have any. So here we're going to create a spotlight. There we go. Render, and now we see something. And in particular, we see all those materials we created earlier using Relight. We're going to turn on shadows using a soft shadow map, because we're going to want soft shadows in this scene. Compute the shadow map. Oops, we forgot to specify the viz group for the shadow map. That is, what objects create shadows. We want them all to create shadows, so we have a viz group with all the objects. Compute the shadow map, and there is the result. Tweak the parameters a little bit to make it look a bit better. Okay, we want just a little bit of blur. Okay, and there we also wanted penumbra. That is, we want the shadow to get more transparent as it gets farther away from the object. We have to bump up the number of samples so it looks better. We don't have so much grain. And there you go. we're also going to create an ambient light. And there we go. A little stronger. Okay, so let's say we're happy with that. That's the lighting we wanted, so we save the shot. Now, one thing you might often want to do is to tweak the material of a single asset in this shot without changing the other assets. So we do this using overrides. Basically, we're selecting a single object and we're overriding its diffuse color. So we're only that reference to that column will be changed. This is the override editor in Relight showing us that the original color is there at level 0, but then we also have an override used by some of the references, turning it blue. Okay, so we save that. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to open up that asset, the original asset, in Relight, and we're going to change its color. You might remember that the asset was red originally. Now we're going to change it to white. Okay, we change the asset's diffuse color, save it, and we're going to load the shot back into Relight. And what you'll see is that the overridden asset should still be blue, but all the original assets will now be white, which is what you would expect, because we changed the original asset but did not change the override in the shot. Okay, now say we want to go back into Maya and we want to make some changes there. Say we want this column to be a bit bigger. We're going to change the animation of this sphere thing a little bit. We're going to add a keyframe to its position. Okay. Then we're going to re-export, and hopefully, if everything worked as it should, we will re-export the scene, but we'll have the same materials, the same lighting that we created earlier in Relight. Nothing is lost. So here we exported, we're going back into Relight, we're reloading the shot. Okay, and as you can see, we have the new modified column, we have the new animation for the spheroid. And hopefully when we render, now we can also see the textures directly in the 3D viewer if we like. And if we re-render, we should see all those materials and lights we created earlier with the modified shot.